Okay, good evening. Chris, you want to start us off with prayer?
Yes, I will open us in prayer. Lord, thank you so much for this evening that we have to gather together and just interview these men and just get to know more about them and more about the way that you're using them to further your kingdom, Lord. And I pray that you just bless this time together, give us wisdom and insight, and just let us use this time to the best of your glory, Lord. Pray all this in your name. Amen.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining Abolish Abortion Alaska. Tonight is week 5 of our course, Are You an Abolitionist? We have 3 special guests with us. Alaska Representative David Eastman, sitting present. Indiana former Senator and candidate Congressman John Jacob on Zoom. And North Carolina former candidate David Buboltz with Abolitionists Rising, also on Zoom. Your interviewees this evening are Abolish Abortion Alaska's very own Chris Hall, Sam Hall, and myself, Cindy Roediger. We will be asking these gentlemen questions relating to abortion, abolition bills, their positions, their goals, and more. We have relatively 15 minutes of interview time per guest, followed by a short clip of each guest. This evening's interviews will be recorded live on Abolish Abortion AK YouTube channel. Please feel free to share. Also, there will be a short intermission of 5 minutes after Congressman John Jacob's interview, as our system needs to reboot. This will create 2 YouTube interviews. There'll be a part 1 and a part 2. So if you're watching YouTube live right now, we'll let you know when we're going to shut down, and just stand by. Within about 5 minutes. We'll come back live again, and you'll see on Abolish Abortion AK another live YouTube pull up. Our guests will remain here physically and on Zoom while that process happens. Commencing this evening's interview will be questions from the audience, along with pre-submitted questions from those unable to attend. We ask those present this evening to kindly silence your phone as a reminder. I think I've done mine. With that said, John is ready. Here we go. Short video.
Here's why we won't keep religion out of politics. Cue screaming leftist. The separation of church and state is found in the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. This was to avoid a federal state church like the Church of England or the Roman Catholic Church in Spain or Portugal. Individual states were even allowed to have a state church well after the adoption of the Constitution, as the First Amendment only restricts Congress, not state government. But what is often meant by this is that religious motivation must be kept out of lawmaking. This is an absurd proposition. Everyone has a religious motivation or code of ethics in the creation of law. If it were true that we must not have religious motivation, no person could make any law. Without the proposition that man is made in the image of God, laws protecting man are reduced to absurdity. This is used as a battering ram against Christian motivations, while atheist assumptions about the world and the nature of man are accepted and celebrated. A lawmaker cannot separate themselves from their motivation for making law. It is impossible, and it is in no way required in the Constitution.
Okay, so we'll get started with the interviews. Chris will interview our first guest, North Carolina's former candidate David Buboltz with Abolitionists Rising.
Good evening, David.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
All right, good.
Well, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Before I start in on the questions, like Cindy said, we have roughly around 15 minutes for everybody for interview time. Would you start us off by giving us kind of a short background on yourself? You know, where you're born and raised, you became a follower of Christ, your education, and when and why you ran for office.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in California. And then, I don't know, when I was in my mid-20s, is basically left there. I don't know who's might be listening in California. It's a beautiful state, but I knew I was going to be fighting the system my whole life and probably couldn't win. So, time to go somewhere else. And my brother was in the Army in North Carolina, and so that's where I knew somebody. So that's where I went, and kind of tried to start a life there. Ended up finding a wonderful woman, got married, started having kids, and there I was in North Carolina. Started to become an abolitionist. How did I end up running for office? Kind of became an abolitionist when I first started to realize that there was genocide going on. I went to the clinic, and because I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to get involved somehow. And there was an abolitionist there at the clinic. And so kind of my first experiences, I was, newly saved, just trying to figure out how to follow God at the time. And, I was kind of shepherded straight into abolitionism right off the get-go. And over the course of time, just working, plowing the ground in North Carolina, we had the opportunity to get North Carolina's first abolition bill. A lot of lobbying, a lot of going to the Capitol. And I got to know my House rep and my senator. Our senator was a deacon or an elder at our local Baptist church, and he was against the abolition bill. He wouldn't support it, and he even authored a bill that would give abortion-causing chemicals to underage girls without parental consent. He authored that bill. That bill passed in North Carolina, and that's the guy representing me. And I went into his office one day, and I can remember it clear as day, and just laid out, hey, this bill causes abortions and kills children. And he kicked me out of his office. He literally stood up, yelled at me, and threw me out. And that was the day I said, he's got to go. And that's when I decided to run. There was an open House seat. There was a redistricting. There's an open House seat. That was a much more winnable race for me. I was still kind of relatively unknown. I had just moved into the area a couple years prior. That would have been the easier race, but I didn't want to just win. I wanted to take that guy out of office because it was just unacceptable what he did. And bringing an abolition bill, I wanted it to be, I wanted to have a good chance that it was going to pass. And I knew that if I could knock off this very well-known, prominent senator, then the state legislator would know that abolition is a thing to be, respected, and they wouldn't be able to throw it in the corner like it had happened to a lot of other abolition bills. So I knew it was a long shot going for Senate, but I was up for the challenge. A part of stop me whenever you want to, but another part of that reasoning was I was also running as an awareness campaign. I was ultimately running for repentance of God's people in this. And the bigger Senate race, I knew I could have a bigger reach, and I could just contact more people. I would have a broader footprint, and I wanted to take that route. Just at the very least, have a bigger footprint to call for repentance for this.
Definitely. So, obviously your platform when running for office was abolitionist, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They got to know what they're voting for.
Yeah, definitely. How was that received by the people of North Carolina, standing on the abolition of abortion?
It was surprisingly well. I mean, I was very surprised at how well it was received. It blew my expectations out of the water. And, in retrospect, I think it's easy to see why. For one, I've been saying the same things I've been saying the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 7 years, 5 years. But when you're running as a candidate, somehow society gives you a little bit more respect. And, it's just, I'm the same guy saying the same things, but all of a sudden they start inviting you to places and they start giving you the mic. And what do you have to say? And you can say it. And people, so there's like almost some of the filter down a little bit, as where you're just a guy on the street and you knock door, or you meet someone on the street, you're just, society looks at you just as another person. Running for office was almost like a tool to bypass that and give a little bit more of a platform. Yeah. I think also another factor is that it ended around a lot of the gatekeepers of abolition. So there's a lot of people who are invested in pro-life compromise. A lot of pastors, a lot of pro-life leaders, a lot of CPCs. They're rooted in their really sinful pragmatism. And they're gatekeepers a little bit. You go to a church, you go to talk to a church, and it gets filtered, it gets construed. But you talk to a normal Christian off the street.
Were you distinguished from the pro-life candidates in this race?
Definitely. I mean, I lived in a really Republican area, and every single person was 100% pro-life. That's what they all said. Every single person said 100% pro-life. So, what do I say? I'm 100% pro-life too. I mean, they already thought Jim Bergen was Mr. Pro-life. So how are you gonna out pro-life the pro-lifer? Words are used to drive distinctions and to drive narratives and to describe what we're talking about. And people needed to know that there's a difference there, and this is the difference. And it was just an awesome engagement tool because people, every door I'd knock, they'd say, wow, I never thought of that. It is different. We can't act like this. I mean, a 10-second, 15-second pitch, and people were already understanding, yes, this pro-life candidate has been compromised.
So, did you have to hold back speaking biblically when running, or were you able to speak freely about the Bible?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hold back, and why should we? I mean, I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to get elected and do a bait and switch campaign. People need to know the truth. People were culturally Christian in that area. And so there wasn't a lot of pushback with that. Even if there was, it's the right thing to do is just say what God says and not to be ashamed of it. And we shouldn't be ashamed of it. And, our law should reflect God's laws with all things. And, that's what I had intended to do if elected, and people needed to know that that's what I intended to do.
Yeah, definitely. So another question. would it have been better to run as pro-life and then put forth an abolition bill after being elected? What do you think on that?
No. Look, like I was saying, it's not a bait and switch campaign. I mean, there's going to be so much opposition to an abolition bill on every level, and I knew that I was going to need the support of that.
Definitely.
I knew that if this abolition bill was going to be successful, you needed the backing of the people who voted for you. I mean, imagine just saying you're pro-life, just trying to get by on, people are confused. People might think different things of what pro-life means to them. You get elected, and then you have an abolition bill, and they're starting to think, whoa, I didn't vote for that.
Mm-hmm.
Your support, where's your backing? And ultimately, the goal is not the abolition bill itself. The abolition bill it would have been an outpouring of repentance of the people in that district. And so, you're missing. I'm missing it. If I'm skipping the most important part, which is, getting people to turn to God and do the right thing. If I'm missing that, just to have an abolition bill, it would have no support. It wouldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm missing the greater mark.
So you had made a comment on the Liberator podcast. We can't lose. If we win, we win. If we lose, we win. Would you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if we're standing on God's word, you can't lose either way.
Exactly.
The duties belong to us. The results belong to God. But it was, I view a campaign in particular as just an incredible opportunity to be a giant drop card. It is a giant drop card. I sent like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 rounds of mailers to 15,000 people each. I mean, what opportunity do you have to do that? It's a massive drop card campaign mailed to people's homes. Also, every single door you knock, every single T-shirt you have, every single time you're speaking at a county Republican meeting, it's just a huge opportunity each and every time to give the gospel, to talk about abolition, to tell people to stop being apathetic, to direct them in the right way, form, and function of the government. And so, yeah, you're winning in all of that. Yeah. I mean, our goal is to move the culture first, and the politics is downstream of that. And let's not, if you win the election, great. But if you ran the campaign in that manner, it's not lost.
Yeah. So another question for you. Did the North Carolina bill take measures against the courts taking judicial supremacy?
You talking about nullification? Yeah, it did. It did. We found a House rep. This was before my campaign. But we found a House rep. It was basically a 3-point bill, and we had told him he needs to add 2 more points to it. And so, yeah, they had the 5-row in there. He needed to amend it to put that in there, but the process of amending it was put in place, and he had submitted everything to officially amend it.
So what was the biggest obstacle in passing the abolition bill?
Well, it didn't pass, and it didn't get out of committee. Pro-lifers, obviously. I mean, I say obviously, but if someone's actually fought for this stuff before. You've seen it time and time again. The Republican pro-life Christians kill abolition bills.
Yeah.
100%. That's what it is. And so all a reason to drive a difference between we're not that. We aren't that. I'm not in that camp. We're not compromising with them. But yeah, they didn't let it out of committee for obvious reasons. They're not ready to follow God yet. They don't want to. They want to hold on to certain things.
Yeah, definitely. So will you run again? And when you run again, will you be running on the abolition platform again? I'm assuming so.
I say yes. I would absolutely run as an abolitionist again on that platform. I just got to see what God wanted of me. So, after that campaign, if I was still living in the area, I probably would have run again. I think I got 38 or 40% of the vote, and this guy had been in office decades and grew up in that town, and I could already see the movement happening. I could already see a lot of fruit, and if I would have stayed there, I think that fruit would have grown. And you keep the hammer down. I think movement would have happened, but I just felt like God was having me be elsewhere.
Very good. Well, thank you, David, for your time. And we are going to show a short clip of when you were running for campaign.
We stand here today at a critical point in history. North Carolina and our nation is on the verge of no return. We have endured years of lockdowns and violations of our rights. A new wave of medical tyranny has weaponized the healthcare system against our citizens. CRT and cultural Marxism are being pushed on the minds of our children. And if all that wasn't bad enough, we live in a state where the leading cause of death is the murder of our children in the womb. No more half measures in defense of the preborn. I will stop the compromise that is systemic in the pro-life establishment. And I will deliver a bill of abolition that will criminalize abortion as the murder that it is. These are our children, and we must start acting like it. We cannot allow for a medical apartheid through vaccine passports and mandates. Medical freedom and privacy are basic human rights. No more unconstitutional lockdowns. We must gain ground on the right to bear arms. 20 states have constitutional concealed carry, and sadly, North Carolina is not one of them. I aim to change that. Finally, we must break the back of the government monopoly on education. Funds should follow the child, and the parents should decide where the child goes, whether that be public, private, or homeschool, with no strings attached. I stand here today with you. I'm a Christian, a husband, a father of 3 young girls. I've worked as an engineer, a business owner. I've been an 11-year Army officer in the North Carolina Guard, all by the grace of God. Join me in the fight for our children's future. Vote in the North Carolina primary election, Senate District 12. I'm David Buboltz. The time to stand is now.
Okay, David, if you wouldn't mind just hanging out with us, we'll go on to our next interview with John Jacobs, followed that by David Eastman, and then we will have some questions for all 3 of you gentlemen. So, Congressman candidate John Jacobs, are you there? Okay, so, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Beautiful, yes. You will also have about 15 minutes interview time, so if you could please Give us just a short, brief background of yourself, where you were born, raised, a follower of Christ when that came about, education, and whatever you seem needed to add.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys for having me on. So my name is John Jacob. I was born and raised in Indianapolis, on the south side of Indianapolis. I am a born-again Christian. The Lord saved me when I was about 24 years old. That was a little bit over 30 years ago. I was raised Roman Catholic and came to know the Lord about at 24 years old. My education, I have my degree in accounting, and I spent about almost 30 years auditing with a watchdog agency, auditing government, which gave me an extensive background auditing hundreds of billions of dollars of government. But when my wife also is a native Hoosier. We have 6 children. We have 5 grandchildren, and I'm an evangelist, street preached for years. What got me into abolition was I had a friend of mine who was ministering out at the abortion clinics, and I was trying to figure out what could I do to actually step into the battle to defend the preborn. So I started ministering out to abortion clinics, and then from there progressed forward as it relates to abolition with what we were doing politically in Indiana. And would you want me to answer also about why I ran for office at this point?
Actually, I think I probably, yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I was preaching in the State House. I was actually preaching John the Baptist style in the main rotunda of the State House. Every legislative session, we had a bill of abolition that was introduced back in 2017 by Representative Curtin Isley, and that bill was actually being killed in committee each year. And I was calling our legislators to repent, and they refused to let the bill out of committee. So in 2019, one of the other brothers that I minister with, he asked me if I knew that my incumbent representative had resigned and they had caucused in somebody else. And I said no. And he asked me whether or not I'd prayerfully consider running for office so we could get the bill of abolition moving forward. And I did. And by the grace of God, come May of 2020, I beat the incumbent. And in running for rep, one of the things that I really pressed forward was the issue of ending all abortion in Indiana, fighting to end all abortion, and co-authoring on the bill of abolition if elected to office.
So that's the upseating of the incumbent pro-life in 2020. How did that? How were you able to unseat him?
Well, I think ultimately by the grace of God, but the incumbent that was in was caucused in. So they were only in for about 6 months. And so they were not like the previous incumbent who had been already in for 20 years, entrenched. This person had not had the name recognition that the previous incumbent did. So although they were caucused in and they were considered an incumbent, the name recognition wasn't there for the incumbent. So that gave me an advantage, but nonetheless, we had a strong door-to-door campaign. I pressed people on the issue of abolition. I pressed people on the issue of liberties, Second Amendment. I told them that if I was elected, that I was going to co-author on the bill to end all abortion in Indiana, and that I would also author a bill to bring constitutional carry to Indiana. And so I spent a lot of time knocking a lot of doors. That really, I would say, was the number one thing that helped me to get elected. Because when I would contrast the typical establishment platform of my opponent versus my platform, which is very clear. I was wanting to end all abortion, that I was wanting to press for Second Amendment rights, I was wanting to press for parental rights, I was wanting to press for religious freedom and liberty, for less taxes, less government intervention. People are like, oh yeah, you're the guy I want to vote for.
So I noticed in your campaign website, you identify as 100% pro-life. How does someone distinguish you from other pro-life candidates running?
It's a good question. So my campaign team and I, we are abolitionists. And I know this is a sticky issue because people have been critical because I used a pro-life language. And what I found was that at the door and talking to people, people don't understand what abolition is. When you use the term abolition, at least it is in Indiana, people don't understand what you're talking about. And you have to spend a significant amount of time trying to help them to understand. I used the term abolition, but my main term that I used was 100% pro-life. And that what I would explain to people is that if I was elected, that I would fight to end all abortion immediately. And so when I explained things that way, people were able to understand, and they were like, oh yeah, I agree with that. And people brought up the exceptions. They would bring up rape, incest, life of the mother. And I'm like, those things would be eliminated as well. All abortion, I'm fighting to end all abortion and treat it for what it is, that it's murder. So the issue of using 100% pro-life was a big issue in my campaign and winning my campaign. In addition, it was something that differentiated me from the other establishment Republicans in Indiana, because all they would do is they basically say they're pro-life, or and that they were endorsed by Right to Life, which was, you know, right to life is just right to some lives, and it's just regulationism. It's just regulating child murder instead of choosing to end all abortion.
What are the biggest obstacles in passing, I believe your bill was called or is called the Protection at Conception Act, is that correct? And what was the biggest obstacle?
It mutated over time. So when Representative Curtin Isley came out with the bill, initially it was called the Protection at Conception Bill. And then later he changed it to the Protection of Life Bill, and then he can't change it to the Life Bill. But the bill, I believe right now, is called the Unborn Children Bill. And the biggest obstacle to the bill was right to life. The establishment Republicans were using right to life as cover. Right to life was very opposed to the Bill of Abolition that we had. They were afraid that it was going to undo all of the work that they had done over the years to basically put all the regulational laws into place. In addition, they were, as typical with right to life, they were not for criminalizing abortion. They were not for prosecuting the mother for murder, which our bill would have done.
And the Right to Life is a pro-life, large pro-life organization in Indiana?
Right to Life, Indiana Right to Life, yes. Indiana Right to Life is just a subcomponent of the National Right to Life organization.
So they would not be for criminalizing if a bill came into, was approved, became law, they would not be for criminalizing somebody who broke that law?
No, because that was part of, from 2017 to 19, we have been pressing right to life as well to get behind the bill, and they refused to get behind the bill. And because they refused to get behind the bill, the other legislators would not get behind the bill. They were using RTL as, the legislators were using RTL as skirt cover, and which was sad because, I mean, we have a Republican supermajority in Indiana, which means Republicans had control of the House, the Senate, and the governorship.
So that would follow up into a question. Since the Dobbs decision in Indiana, has anything changed? And I'm especially curious about the governor. I think it's Holmes is your governor. He had a special session that addressed abortion. Yes,
Governor Holcomb. So when Roe was overturned in June, they called for a special session in September of 2022, and although our abolition bill was being killed in committee every single year, it never got a hearing, never got a vote. We were finally able to take the regulatory abortion bill that the establishment Republicans had put forward, and Representative Nisley and myself were able to amend that bill and take the language that we had from the abolition bill. We stripped out the entire regulatory abortion bill, and we stuck in all the language from the abolition bill into that bill. And we then forced, what we did is we made a motion to actually have that amendment heard on the House floor. And Representative Nisley made the motion, I seconded, and we made our plea, and then we called for a roll call vote. In Indiana, we have 100 out of 100 Republicans in the House. I'm sorry, out of 100 representatives in the House, we have 71 House Republicans, or at least so-called 71 House Republicans. Out of 71 House Republicans, only 6 of those Republicans, Representative Nisley, myself, and 4 other Republicans, voted for the bill to abolish abortion.
Wow.
And by the way, our bill in Indiana, Indiana was the first state that actually had a bill of full abolition, and that was in 2017. And then we were the first state to actually get a actual vote on the House floor for a bill of abolition. First time in the country in all of human history.
So what would you say is stopping the pro-life legislators from supporting an abolition bill?
Boy, that's a tough question. I think there's a lot of dynamics that are going on. I think my observations are, number one, right to life is probably the immediate. They like getting the skirt cover. Right to life is the quote pro-life organization that they've been using politically for years. They had been using Roe versus Wade as cover, but I would say primarily the same thing that occurs in the political realm is the same thing that happens with the church. I think the apathy of the church and the apathy of the church as it relates to abortion and abolition, that same apathy, I think, carries over symmetrically in the political arena. I mean, when I look at when we minister out at the abortion clinics and we try to mobilize other Christians with the plight of the preborn and coming out to the abortion clinics to minister to rescue the preborn, the apathy is, and the silence is just deafening. It's just horrid. But yet that same apathy statistically, I would say runs over into the political arena as well.
Yes,
So I would say that the bottom line is I think it's just hypocrisy. I think it's a matter of hypocrisy. I think people who call themselves Christians are just apathetic to the plight of the preborn. If the church stepped up and put the pressure on the political arena, I think we would see politicians, I think we would see them moving. But
yeah, now that you mentioned that, can you go ahead and speak a little bit more on politics and church, whether they should be separated, whether they should be combined, how Christians should view that?
Well, I think in relationship to the First Amendment, I don't think there was anything in the First Amendment. I think everything as it relates to the First Amendment is that the whole quote separation of church and state, it was never meant to be that the church was never meant to influence the government. It was just that the government was never meant to have its hands in the affairs of the church. So, I mean, if you look at the Black Robe Regiment of our early founding fathers, our founding fathers, I think, firmly believed, and they exercised the church having its influence in the political arena. And in the same way, I think the church has, I believe, according to our Constitution, the church absolutely has the right to be able to influence the laws of our country to be righteous laws that line up with Scripture.
Okay, I appreciate your answers. If you haven't noticed, we've gone over our 40 minutes. We're going to continue going. We're having that monitored. If we do crash, we'll cease then and we'll reboot. But Mr. Jacobs, if you will hold on with us as well with David Buboltz. First, I'm going to have a video clip. It'll be our third video here. And then after David Eastman, then we'll have some questions. So the video that we're going to watch, the short clip from John Jacob on the House floor, he is rebuking Indiana legislators for another do-nothing regulatory bill. The 15-minute clip of this will be posted on the YouTube channel, but for right now, we'll watch this short clip.
I find it interesting in relationship to the regulation of abortion that one of my Democratic colleagues in discussion with me called out Republicans as being hypocrites because they say they're pro-life, but they don't stand on the issue of total abolition like the representative from District 22 and I, which is what pro-life really means. Even the Democrats know that, meaning abortion. Human life begins at conception. Murder is the taking of an innocent human being's life. And abortion always takes the life of an innocent preborn human being. Therefore, it is always murder. God, our Creator, says, "You shall not murder."
All right, thank you for that. I'm going to start this next interview with our own Representative David Eastman. Welcome. Yep. So we are trying to do 15 minutes apiece, but I'm not entirely sure that we'll do this in only 15 minutes. Our record is not very good. So could you take a moment and just tell us about your background, where you're born and raised, and whatever information you want to share, how you became a follower of Christ. We could go into more, but I really think it would take quite a bit of time. So you just share what you'd like.
It says it's on.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
John got you.
All right, very good. My parents were in Northern California when I was born. My dad was going through a seminary program, looking ahead to being a pastor. He decided not to ultimately, but that was sort of the community that I grew up in, was in and around the seminary. And when I was growing up, it was in Southern California, so Orange County area. A couple weeks after I turned 18, I ended up in a place called West Point and was in the Army for about 10 years. That's how I got up here to Alaska a little over 20 years ago. Worked in the civilian side at the military base down in Anchorage, J-Bear, and been out here in Wasilla for many, many years now with my family. I've got 4 kids. Our 5th is on the way, all born here in Wasilla, and so we're looking ahead to June for our next arrival.
Wonderful. All right. Could you tell us what district you represent and in Alaska and where that is?
Yeah, I represent the Wasilla Meadow Lakes District. So very, very close to where we are right now.
And what is the title of your abolition bill?
The Life at Conception Act or the Preborn Child Equality Act.
And the current number, if you don't mind?
House Bill 205.
House Bill 205, thank you. And when did you first write this bill, and when was it first presented?
We first presented it in my freshman year, so I joined the legislature in 2017. And
similar to Mr. John Jacob, I think.
Yeah, we've seen each other once or twice around the country. And I filed it the first couple of terms, and then another legislator filed it the 3rd term, and then this last term I filed it again.
Okay. And what was your reasoning for writing the bill?
We need to end the murder of the unborn.
Very simple. I like it. Thank you. All right. Who has co-signed to the Life at Conception Act?
Right now, it's a free slate. Anyone still gets a chance to co-sign because no one has yet.
Are there any pro-life Republicans in the House who agree with your bill?
Well, if you give me an idea what you mean by pro-life, I'll be able to answer that.
Those who ran a ticket pro-life, who state they're pro-life.
There are plenty of people in that category.
Right. And so then the question is, why are they not supporting a bill that abolishes, criminalizes, abortion? Yeah.
Well, I think before they got to making a decision about whether or not to support a bill like that, they would have to make a decision on whether or not they were going to stop using tax dollars to pay for abortion every year. So if they haven't got there yet, they probably aren't going to get to the bill this year.
Since you have been putting forth the Life at Conception Act bill, has there been other representatives in the House who have put forth pro-life bills?
Nominally pro-life bills, and there's another bill that's in the process this year, but I don't know that it's taken particularly seriously. When the other legislator went to present the bill.
Why would it not be taken particularly seriously?
Because the legislator who wrote the bill didn't take it very seriously.
Why would he do it?
I think one of the things he said when he first was presenting the bill in committee was that he forgot to include human in the bill. So some of the committee was asking, so are we talking about animals here? Are we talking about artificial intelligence here? We're not entirely sure. Because there wasn't a lot of effort that went into writing that particular bill.
Okay. All right, so then how would you differentiate between your bill and others?
Well, the premise of the Life at Conception Act is fairly straightforward. Right now we have 2 parallel, distinct sets of law in Alaska. One's for children and adults, and the other's for those who haven't been born yet. And they have different statutes and different crimes and different penalties. And when you're talking about something like murder, maybe the penalty should be the same. When you're talking about manslaughter or assault or homicide or any of these different things, it really is illustrative of the problem when we feel like we need to treat them all as separate, crimes.
Indeed. When passed, would your bill criminalize the act of abortion?
Always.
Is it accurate to say your bill would abolish, that is, to formally and officially end or outlaw Alaska Statute 1141-180, which currently removes the penalty for the mother who willfully and intentionally causes the death of her own unborn child?
Yeah, that law would go away along with many others that deal with abortion.
Good. Has anything changed in Alaska since the overturn of Roe?
Yes. Here in Alaska, we've had another 3,000 children murdered. And that's about the only change that I've tracked.
Yes, I'm sorry, I probably should use my mic. It's probably increased.
Abortion annually has increased in Alaska, yes.
And it's also not including DIY abortions and ingestion of pills either. So, do you believe the privacy clause in Alaska's constitution legalizes abortion? And if so, do we need to implement a constitutional amendment?
I think our Constitution's fine as it is, and I think people knew what they were, voting on when they went to approve it at the ballot box. I think one of the important parts of constitutions are you do need to know what you're voting on in order for it to go into legal effect. And if Alaskans had understood what some judges say they were voting on, I don't think they would have voted the same way.
Mm-hmm. What measures can you take or have taken to keep the courts from adopting wrong judicial interpretation of your bill or issue an injunction when it passes?
Well, principally in Alaska, the first thing that needs to happen is legislators, being the elected branch of government, need to start acting like they represent the people. Right now, so many of my colleagues don't even consider the Constitution in what they do. They might have a bill that's terribly unconstitutional on some issue or other, and so many times the answer that they give is, well, we'll just let the courts figure that out, and if they strike it down, then we won't do it.
In the past, the Life at Conception Act has been preceded by another one of your bills, the Responsible Judges Act. Do you still have that bill?
That's House Bill 207, and those are always filed right about the same time, just reminding the legislative branch that they do actually have the power to rein in either of the two other branches through impeachment, along with other tools that they have at their disposal. They just don't choose to use those tools.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Has there been support among your constituents regarding this bill?
Very much so.
How about the senators? Have you received any support?
When I first ran for office, one of the candidates for senator in my area was committed to filing the bill in the Senate as well. And he and I have been in office for the same 8 years together, but he never got around to filing it.
Okay. So that particular bill, the one not filed, is that consistent with this? One moment.
What I'm asking here is, where is your bill now? And
Are we talking about the Life at Conception Act?
the Life at Conception Act.
Where is the Life at Conception Act bill now?
It is currently in the HEST committee, and we've had one hearing on that bill, and it hasn't moved since that time.
Could you explain why in the past your bill, once in committee, does not get a hearing?
Well, frankly, ending abortion is not seen as good politics in Alaska. Good politics would be the bill that we voted on last week, which would mandate insurance coverage for all forms of prescription contraception. That was Planned Parenthood's bill.
So that would include mifepristol?
All prescription coverage. No insurer could limit your access to any prescription birth control types of medicines and items there, and that was Planned Parenthood's bill, and most Republicans were glad to vote for that.
Most Republicans, you said, were glad to vote for that.
All the Democrats and most of the Republicans as well.
Is it true that Alaska State Health Insurance Program, Medicaid, or Denali Care pays for most abortions for Alaska residents?
It's actually called Denali Kid Care, and yes, that's what's used to fund most of the abortions that are government paid for.
Okay. What do you say to those who believe you should compromise by allowing a rape exception or life of the mother exception?
Well, I would start at the very beginning. The easiest thing that legislators could do right now, which is also strongly supported by the public, is stop using the public's taxpayer dollars to pay for the abortions. And I think once we got to that point, then the next conversation might be something about, all right, when is abortion going to be legal and when is it going to be illegal? And if you honestly believe in your heart that, in the case of rape, you need to punish someone, I would say find someone to punish other than the child.
Like the rapist.
Like the rapist, for example.
Indeed. What is your most effective approach to pro-life Christians who are afraid of the backlash of friends and family for criminalizing abortion?
Well, today in Alaska, we're still living with the effects of a decision we made back in 1970 as a state. We decided that we were going to make abortion legal. Roe versus Wade didn't, force Alaska to do that. We did that to ourselves. And, we've been living with the aftermath of that for, 50 plus years now. And so there's all sorts of defenses that have grown up around the status quo and why that's a good thing and why it shouldn't change. And so most of our politicians have made their peace with that and don't want to rock the boat. But there are issues where rocking the boat is the only good thing you can do. Certainly in my position, just to maintain the status quo it would make my being in office, a waste of time and effort, frankly.
Thank you. This is our last question. Could you share with us the magnitude of the personal financial strain the Democratic Party is causing you, and how can your constituents help?
Yeah, well, I would say that it's not just the Democrat Party, but if you want to be a conservative in the Alaska legislature right now, if you want to stand for things like life, then they will make you pay a premium. And so for my family, that's been a little over $300,000 in legal fees just for serving in office. Now that has very little to do with actually running for office. That's a campaign, that's different. These are just the legal bills that they make you pay. And that's not just around election time, that's last week and that's next week and it will continue on, I'm sure, for the foreseeable future. And yes, they want you to pay that out of pocket so that they can find better people in their eyes to fill the seat that you might have been elected to. So that's where we're at, and that is not just a Democrat issue. It's Republicans and Democrats both filing fallacious lawsuits or complaints of various kinds. And I'll be up on Thursday next week for another one of those being hauled before the Ethics Committee. And that's, of course, a Democrat bastion where they like to help conservatives leave office.
Well, we appreciate the work that you've put in, and we're sorry for all of the troubles that you have to go through for that. So.
Well, thank you.
I thank you for your time.
I have a follow-up question.
That was not your last question.
Sorry. I have a follow-up question. It was back to relating paying for abortion. Now, if we are stating, so the question to you is first, I guess I have more than one question. First question is abortion, would you state it's murder?
It is murder.
It is murder. And if it is murder, we should treat it like murder.
Yes.
That's correct. And if we put forth a bill that your bill does state that it is murder and should be criminalized, then there would be no worry in the state could not pay for murder.
That would be true. That would be true. That is not the situation right now. You have all three branches of government coming together every year and saying that this is a priority. In fact, this is so much of a priority that we're going to not do things like pay dividends, and instead we're going to spend that on things like abortion.
To murder our children.
It's good business. It's good politics.
Yeah. It's
profitable. Very profitable for some.
Well, we are very grateful for you being here tonight. We are going to show a video. This is a video from 2020 where Abolitionists Rising, Russell Hunter, publicly endorsed Alaska Representative David Eastman. So would you go ahead and play that, please?
Hunter with Free the States, and I am here with David Eastman, the author of House Bill number 178 in the state of Alaska. It's the Life at Conception Bill, the Abolition of Abortion in Alaska Act. David Eastman has filed a bill that we believe is a righteous legislative action against child sacrifice in the state. We just wanted to endorse him on behalf of Free the States. We're very proud and honored to be able to support his campaign, support the work that he's doing in the legislative body here in Alaska, and just want to introduce and let David kind of talk about himself and a bit about his bill.
Oh, thank you, Russell. Well, the bill is longer than we like, but most of that is just the legal definitions which deal with bringing our state laws, our state statutes into conformity with our state constitution. And our state constitution is great on the subject of life and on the subject of the right to bear arms, amongst other things. And our state laws, most of them on this area, are good as well. You might have seen in the headlines last month, 6 people were charged here in Alaska with murder for killing a child in a mother's womb. And so we have those laws on the books. They're not consistent, because we have this exception saying if an abortionist is involved, then all bets are off, and the child has no right to life. What this does is it simply reminds the legislature and all the people of Alaska that our Constitution says that we as Alaska citizens have the right to life, and that will be enshrined and honored in our state laws.
So it cleans up the statutes. In your state laws, you're not allowed to murder, except in the event that you're choosing to have your preborn child murdered.
Yes. I mean, literally, it's a mother's consent, and if that were to switch, then it would be murder, and if it is not, then it's not. Suddenly you have the right to life, and suddenly you're a piece of property. Right. And what the bill does is says, you have the right to life all 9 months.
So abolitionists around the country who follow these bills, and pull for these bills, oftentimes they say, okay, yes, but isn't this going to be sort of shot down by the Supreme Court? Isn't this going to be something that just sort of, it's just a statement bill? Does your bill have within it anything to do with standing up for judicial supremacy? Or are you expecting this to be something just you're making a statement about life beginning at conception and abortion's murder? Or do you have plans that you will actually abolish abortion in Alaska?
Yeah, so there's 2 bills. There's House Bill 178 and 179. The Alaska Life Conception Act is the 178. And then immediately, same time we introduced 178, we also introduced 179, which is the Responsible Judges Act. And that reminds the legislature and the judges as well that in our constitutional system here in Alaska, it's the legislature which is given the right to hold accountable and, if necessary, to impeach any judge that violates their oath of office, that violates the Constitution. And it reminds the judges that they can't veto that by, challenging that in court. An impeachment is final. If the judge is violating the Constitution, then they should expect to be impeached at some point.
So these are both bills that sort of go beyond what we are seeing from most Republican conservative legislators. Certainly these are bills that I would say go beyond your standard pro-life bill. This is a bill seeking to criminalize abortion in the state of Alaska, not seeking to wait or rely on courts to allow them to do it, but standing up for justice and actually doing what a legislator is supposed to do. So on behalf of Free the States and just abolitionists across the country who sometimes see these things and, go, okay, well, I got to read it. It's kind of long. Is it a good bill or is it a bad bill? Does it meet the necessary requirements of a total righteous piece of legislation? And it absolutely does. So we want to endorse you. We want to endorse House Bill 178 and do everything we can to support it. Is there anything that you, specifically the people of Alaska, you would like to ask them to do to get behind this bill, to rally to the cause and support you?
Absolutely. All of us in Alaska have 2 legislators that represent us, one in the House, one in the Senate in Juneau. And we want to be talking with each of those legislators, no matter where in Alaska you live, even if you're in my district and I haven't heard from you, I want to know that this is a piece of legislation that you support. If you have ideas for making it better, we're always open to that. But it's a good bill. We've worked long and hard on it, and we are asking everyone to contact their legislator and let them know where they stand on this bill.
Yeah, do not sleep on this bill. You need to find out who your rep is, and you need to contact them, and you need to say, I want you to co-sponsor this bill. I think David Eastman is running the right kind of bill, the bill that we need. You need to make your voice heard. You need to be persistent. If you can, you need to set up an appointment. It's also excellent if you would email David Eastman and let him know that you support it. Give him your information so he can keep you updated. As for our part, we're going to try to keep people updated as the bill progresses, as the opposition plans things. You need to be prepared and ready to go to the Capitol to rally support. You need to be prepared to write your local newspaper, to get on Facebook, to engage in the debates. Do everything you can to understand what this bill does and how you can help it, how you can support it. So don't sleep on this bill. This is a guy who's put his political career out there, and he's not just going there to feed himself and be comfortable. He's doing the hard thing, seeking justice.
All right, well, welcome back. So just to make sure, we have David Buboltz and John Jacob still with us. Can you make yourself known?
Yeah, I'm here.
And John,
I'm here.
Great. Okay, so we are going to do rapid fire questions. First, I want to, actually before I do that, let me ask if anyone here present would like to ask a question. Or maybe this will be a good time to think of a question, and I'm going to go over some questions that were submitted to me from those who are unable to be here. And we'll
This question is from Jacob Miller in Texas. This is for David Buboltz. What advice would you give to an abolitionist considering running, but with a lot of family duties?
I could definitely understand that, and we have obligations to our families for sure, first and foremost. I think that even just putting your name in on the ticket can really cause a lot of pain for some incumbents. And so, I think we can just have the mindset to think broad picture here for the totality of the movement and for these children. Every little bit counts, and it's all accumulative. So even if someone doesn't have even any time at all, just challenging someone can cause a lot of pain. But you never know where God can take it. So if it's something you want to do, go for it. I would say I think it's important to keep in mind that the focus is repentance of God's church, of the church, and you get that right, then the abolition bill will be there.
Thank you. This is another question from Jacob Miller in Texas, and this question could be for any three of you men here. Yeah, or all three. Could you describe to me your own particular strategy at engaging the voters on the issue of abortion? Example, if you were to knock on someone's door and had only 1 minute, what would you say?
We're here to abolish, not regulate abortion. People get it. They get it in 10 seconds. So the whole pro-life establishment has been regulating abortion. We're not here to do that. We're here to abolish it.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else?
I would add that although I'm an abolitionist, I agree with David on this. And when I knocked on people's doors and I would use the issue of 100% pro-life and say that I'm going to fight to end all abortion now, not regulate abortion as we've been doing, they get that. So they get abolition without using the word abolition. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that because I think we've allowed the pro-life movement to hijack the word pro-life. Pro-life does mean for life. And when we're talking about, and this is, I think, an important issue, when we talk about the word pro-life, those that are in the pro-life movement for the last 40, 50 years, they're not pro-life. What they are is pro-death. They're pro-abortion. They're pro-abortion with some exceptions.
Indeed.
You know, in Alaska, I think it's maybe worse than in many other states because we just had a governor last year who got up and gave a State of the State speech and decided to use the State of the State speech to capitulate as a state to ever doing anything to amend abortion. In fact, he went so far as to redefine pro-life. He says he wants Alaska to be the most pro-life state, and what he means by that is we want more people to move here. And so the level of engagement maybe in our state is a little bit less specific on the details and just talking about the immensity of the problem that we have here.
A poorly tutored state.
We need to retutor them.
And the law can do that. Okay, this next question is from Bonnie Canoni for David Buboltz. What is the most effective way to get other politicians who may be on the fence about abolition to listen and understand the need for the complete abolition of abortion?
I think first start, are they Christian? Are you willing to follow God? Are you willing to follow God before other things? You know, hey, if we don't do this, then a Democrat will get in office. Well, you're scared of Democrats more than you are about God. Just do the right thing and let the results be up to God. And the problem with the pro-life movement is it's not pro-death penalty for murderers. So I think there's a big distinction there. Yeah, I mean, if the politician's willing to follow God, then they're going to be willing to do the right thing. I think you start with that presupposition.
Thank you. This next question is from Rick Small, and it is for John Jacobs. He says, your words, especially before an election, are important. However, more than your words, what will your action be if you win the election from that point forward regarding abortion?
Are you talking about because of my run right now for Congress? Is that what you're talking about?
I would assume that is what he is talking about.
Okay, so when I ran, as what I've been stressing to people when I campaigned as a state representative, I told people that I was going to co-author on a bill of abolition, a bill to end all abortion in Indiana, and I did. And what I'm telling people right now on my campaign platform as it relates to Congress is that one of the planks of my congressional campaign platform is that if I'm elected to Congress, that I'm going to go to D.C. and that I'm going to fight to end all abortion in the United States.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is from Reese Wayner from Unalaska. This is for David Eastman. He says, what is the most effective way of communicating with lawmakers? Email, letter, phone call? How do we bend the ear?
I'll give you an answer you might not be expecting, but that is true. So politicians have two hats that they wear. And one of them is human being, and the other one is political animal. And when you are interacting with a politician in a political situation, if they've been in politics for any length of time, if they've been elected for any length of time, they will be operating and really seeing themselves, not as a human being, not as a Christian, but as a human animal. And they will interact with you on that basis. And they interact with each other, they interact with me on that basis. And it's almost like the Chronicles of Narnia and the Silver Chair. The prince has 1 hour each day when he is no longer a servant to the witch, and he can actually, you can engage with him, and he can listen, and he can hear what you're saying. But the 23 other hours of the day, there is not going to be any engagement on any kind of rational or reasonable level. So don't engage with your politicians thinking that, they're going to be acting like normal, reasonable people, because they're in the chair, and they are, and that's part of the lifestyle and the culture and the air they breathe. Politicians, as political animals, will interact with you and be moved based on what impacts their political future. And really, that's the only thing, that's the only language that they will understand, unless you happen to catch them one of those rare moments, maybe at their best friend's funeral or some other time when they're not thinking like a politician and they can actually hear what you're saying.
But how can we talk about things like that at the funeral?
That takes courage.
That was insightful. Thank you. Okay, this next question is for both David Eastman and John Jacobs. Are you averse to calling a righteous bill to abolish human abortion a bill of abolition? And please explain.
Oh, I think it's fine. There's many ways to call bills. I think a bill of abolition is fine. It probably does need a little bit of framing so that those who aren't familiar with the terminology can really get what you're saying.
I think from my standpoint, I'm not averse to the word abolition. What I stress, what I want to really stress is the issue of bridging the gap with the voter. If the voter is not catching what you're saying, then you need to change your language so that they understand what you're saying. And all I'm trying to say is that a lot of times when you use the term abolition, I had to explain what that meant. I wasn't averse to using the term, but I also had to explain what the term meant.
I think so much.
Yeah, I'm hearing both of you gentlemen, and what's coming to my mind is us, Abolish Abortion Alaska. That's needs to be our work in getting the definition out.
Educating the culture about what abolition is.
Yes, educating the culture, what abolition is, and then you guys following suit with the language. For example, in Oklahoma, everybody knows, the legislators know, the voters there know what abolition is, and it's growing, and it's been the hard work of individuals, abolitionists like myself, that are continually trying to educate the culture, because pro-life has been sabotaged, but it's been sabotaged from the very beginning.
So I suppose whenever we do our job well, then the legislators can do their job in the...
It would probably be helpful, as we grow.
Sure, and just realize, if you're here in Alaska, we're literally battling the definition of whether pro-life means pro-population growth.
Well, right, we've got it twisted. It's definitely upside down.
Okay, this next question for all three of you: Are you averse to calling yourself an abolitionist? This is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it's
kind of the same thing, I suppose.
Well, the first question, I'll interrupt. The first question was more for the bill. Now it's probably the same individual. I don't remember. I've got some feedback here, but yourself as an abolitionist.
I don't mind the language, but I'll tell you, I use it in many, many different kinds of contexts that may have nothing to do with abortion. Do I want to abolish gun control? Yes, I do. Do I want to, the distinction for me is, do I want to hurt, Planned Parenthood's bottom line? It's like, no, I want to put them out of business in the state of Alaska. And so, yes, I want to abolish the abortion industry. And there are many other things that need abolishing, which hopefully good people will step up and work to do.
Exposing the evil, fighting to abolish the evil in our culture. Yep. Okay, we've got a couple more. You going to continue, Sam?
Yes, ma'am. All right, the next one, for all three of you men. What is more important to you, that the murder of the preborn is unconstitutional, or that it is a heinous sin against our holy God that leads to his judgment? Do your words and actions unashamedly reflect that?
I'll answer that.
Go
I
ahead.
would say that I am first and foremost concerned with how God sees the murder of the preborn. God says, "You shall not murder. Life begins at conception." I have continually beat that drum. When I was in office, I privately and publicly rebuked our legislators in the state of Indiana and caught an enormous amount of flack because of it. But the bottom line is that the judgment of God is on our nation because of the shedding of innocent blood. And the church, our nation, and our political realm needs to repent.
Thank you.
Amen.
I would actually say neither. The scene that comes to me is from the movie Schindler's List towards the end when Schindler's talking about, how could he have saved one or two more lives, and could he have, sold his Nazi ring and perhaps purchased another life with it. And I think it's not about making it unconstitutional. It's not about, the political statement that it is. I think it's much more about actually saving the life and the individual. And all those can be part of that. But I also, keep that, front and center, that this isn't just a political fight. This is tangible, physical. It should be visceral. It shouldn't just start, when election day comes around, kind of a thing. It's every day in this state.
And it is wrong because it is a heinous crime against a holy God.
It is.
Yeah. All right, and this is, I believe.
If you don't mind, I'll take this one because this one is kind of a run-on, and so that would be fitting that it came from me. Anyhow, from Alexander, whoever wants to answer. March 26, 2024, this year, the Supreme Court heard the abortion pill case. Here is a quote from the Christian law firm bringing the suit. Quote, "Women deserve to have the ongoing care of a doctor when taking abortion drugs," unquote. And then they state there is a sign saying women's health matters in the background. In what world can you expect God to honor these endeavors?
These what? Endeavors. Okay.
Yeah. Why would God honor something that's not God honoring? He won't. We need to focus on, why we're here and what we're doing as Christians, and it's to glorify God. And if we focus on that, everything else will fall in line. But
Yeah, nice, simple to the point.
He will take every evil and wicked deed, and he will turn it for good in the end. But that doesn't mean that it's praiseworthy to be doing the evil deeds.
We do not do evil that good may occur.
Yeah, and the idea that we're going to, reframe opposition to abortion in some kind of pro-abortion language. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I get when I talk to other legislators, in this state. I talk about, all right, here we have a bill, and one time the response I got was, well, yeah, but we need a pro-life bill that Planned Parenthood's okay with because they're so powerful.
Right. So it's like we need a bill so the rapist is comfortable. We need a bill so the murderer is comfortable. Insanity.
Priorities.
So that was.
I think one other thing I would like to comment also, the issue of medical care, because abortion is always touted as medical care. I think we need to continue to sit there and beat the issue on abortion. Abortion is it is not a medical service. They want to say that it's a medical service, but it's not. It is nothing short of just of execution. And there's never an instance where abortion is a medical service. Let me say that again. Abortion is never a medical service, and that needs to be really stressed. It's murder.
Yeah,
every time.
It's priorities. So do we want to talk about making sure that the prisoner gets good medical care when they're on death row and they're being injected and killed? Why?
When the purpose is execution. Okay, so that concludes the questions, except if there's anyone here that would like to ask a question. Hold on a second.
So is there any, when you're running for office, planks and there are purposes and things like this, and you know, we've always been taught that the Republican Party has planks pro-life and all this stuff. Now it's been unveiled that, you know, pro-life is really not pro-life. We're not talking about that. So how do you run for office as a Republican or a Democrat when the planks are against what you're trying to achieve? Do you receive funds from the Republicans if your plank doesn't agree with their plank? You know, how does that work? How do the planks of the government parties work? Funding and being elected and all of that.
Yeah, if you want support from Planned Parenthood, you will have to commit to 100% of the planks of Planned Parenthood. And that's part of being endorsed by Planned Parenthood. And historically, until just a few years ago, if you said the right things, you could get an endorsement from Alaska Right to Life too. And whether or not you actually ever did any of those things. So if you are on the Democrat side, yes, planks are very important. And what you say, you know, you will be held to. But we're in the state where, you know, the most powerful Republican is Lisa Murkowski, who talks openly about, you know, whether or not she wants to stay Republican, you know, on a pretty regular basis. So on the Republican side, there's no significance whatsoever to politicians' planks or position statements or anything like that. That's what you do when you're getting elected. What you do when you're in office in the Capitol is something totally different, totally unconnected.
And just to follow up, I possibly misheard, but did you say Alaska Right to Life endorsed anyone, or were you meaning
Yeah, up until a few years ago, Alaska Right to Life endorsed a lot of the politicians, and they're still, many of them are still in office from that time. And they, you know, proceeded when they changed their philosophy to unendorse most all those legislators. But yeah, it was much easier to be endorsed by Right to Life. I mean, even Bill Walker, you know, came to Right to Life and talked about how pro-life he was and said all the right stuff and filled out all the statements and then proceeded as governor to be pro-choice.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? John Jacobs or David Buboltz, did you want to respond to that question?
Yes. I think it's, you know, people have asked me, do you want, John, why don't you run on the independent ticket? And because it's just virtually impossible to win on the independent ticket. So running on the Republican ticket, I'm not going to have people chase me off the Republican platform when I think the Republican platform, when I look at the wording, is a good platform. The problem is that the vast majority, and I say vast, I mean, I'm talking like 98 to 99% of Republicans don't act like Republicans. And, you know, when you do try to sit there and run on the Republican platform, then you get lit up by your own party. The harder part is that you've just got a variety of Republicans all across the board. You've got liberal Republicans, you've got moderate Republicans, and then you've got hardline right Republicans. So it's just tough to figure out the dimensions of whatever area that you're running in to figure out, you know, do I have a lot of right-leaning leaning Republicans in the area that I'm running in, or do I have a lot of left-leaning Republicans that I'm in the area that I'm running in? So, I mean, there's a lot of challenges depending on what area of the country you're running in and your own specific district in the state that you're running in.
Thank you. Okay, so this will conclude the interview and the questions. And I thank you both, John Jacobs and David Buboltz, for coming on Zoom. You are more welcome to stay if you'd like. We've got just a couple things to go over with David Eastman, so if you gentlemen want to stay, that's great. Otherwise, I know it's late where you are, 2 and 3 hours, and so I do thank you very much for your time. And so we will continue now. We have another video.
Also at the state capitol right now, a hearing is taking place about a controversial abortion bill. Wasilla Representative David Eastman has proposed making the procedure a crime in Alaska. Georgina Fernandez continues to watch that for us and has this developing update. Georgina?
Mike, testimony on the bill proposing to criminalize abortion in Alaska just started about 40 minutes ago. The bill's sponsor, Representative Eastman, has not yet talked. He says he'll wait at the end of the hearing in front of the Health and Social Services Committee. Eastman calls the bill the Life at Conception Act. It proposes to criminalize abortion where individuals who performed the procedure could face murder charges. Eastman also wants to make it illegal for the Department of Health to pay for any abortion services or drugs despite health concerns. The bill would change Alaska law to recognize life at conception, and it would classify what Eastman calls an unborn child in the bill to be an Alaska resident and protected under the state's constitution. Eastman argues the state has to ensure it follows its duty in protecting all lives without discrimination. The representative adding the bill would, in his view, empower the state to take action to prevent the death of a child. In his sponsor statement, Eastman writes, initially, taking the life of a child waiting to be born in Alaska occurs the same penalties as taking the life of any other person. But we have already heard from the Alaska Division of Legal and Research Services attorneys saying it would be unconstitutional to criminalize abortions, restrict Medicaid funding, and judicial review. The division, writing to the House Health and Social Service Chair, Representative Mike Prax, they say prohibiting abortion will force the Department of Health to choose between violating a statute or a constitutional right, going on to say they do not know what the department would do in this situation, but the Alaska Attorney General has previously advised the department to pay for medically necessary abortions. Planned Parenthood has called this an extreme bill without any exceptions. Eastman supporters call it necessary change. We'll continue to monitor this hearing and we'll bring you the latest at 10.
Okay, so John, I'm okay to do slides up here now, right? Okay, great. Get that set up. And we are wrapping up to the end, David Eastman. We started out, I'm so grateful for him. We started. Okay, so you don't want me to. Okay. I still need to see my slides, so I know what I'm doing, so give me, okay, so this is fine, so. Thank you. Try. Okay, so last evening's talk, or this last portion, we'll be talking about David Eastman's bill, the Life at Conception Act. In Alaska, the paradigm shift is happening, just like Sam had stated in Abolitionists keeping their hands to the plow. It becomes only a matter of time before the truth destroys misinformation of the opposition, in this case, the pro-life legislators, and the shift to the truth of abolition, which stands firm on God's word, his standards, and not man's. We pray that we're doing just that here in these weeks. Are you an abolitionist? So David Eastman's bill does meet the 5 components of an abolition bill: from conception, no exceptions, equal protection, defies the tyrants, repeal and supersedes statutes. So I would like, the Life at Conception Act bill repeals and supersedes regulation to murder. Next slide. Okay. And we'll go to the next slide, which is going to show, if you haven't received on the back table the sponsor statement for Life at Conception Act, on the abolishabortionak.com will also have the sponsor statement and the full bill on there as well. And right now, next slide, next 2 slides. One more. Okay, so David Eastman, I'm going to leave this to you. Can you go ahead and explain to us what's the purpose of a sponsor statement? What is your sponsor statement stating in regards to your bill?
Sure. Well, I mean, I would say first that, my name's on it because you need a legislator's name to be on the bill, but it's not my bill. I mean, this is a bill on behalf of every Alaskan that wants to end abortion. And I was certainly not the only person to, put together the information to package it and write it, and there were many people that contributed. I write a sponsor statement to kind of summarize in a page or generally a page or less of what exactly is the reason that you should vote for the bill. It's mostly to other legislators to try and say, all right, here's a bill, kind of here's what it does, here's why it's a good thing. And so that's what it's talking about. The bill itself, because there are a lot of different statutes being changed and repealed, ends up being fairly long. So the sponsor statement is a way of just kind of summarizing all that up in one place. And it's going to talk about some of the things that are being repealed and some of the things that are being changed, and some of the things that are in the Constitution which aren't being changed because they talk about everyone having the right to life in our state Constitution.
I'm just checking over my notes, see if there's anything else to ask you. Oh, yes, I noticed in your bill, instead of preborn, you're now using unborn. Could you give your reasoning to why?
Sure, and I can go back and forth in using both or either, but it goes back to, when I am going to go and I'm going to talk in another place. I'm going to try and communicate with the people there, and I'm going to try and communicate using the words that they understand and know what the meaning is. And preborn has been the kind of thing where those who are close to the abolitionist camp use the word and understand what it means, and to others it's like, what's that? I'm not sure, and it can be a distraction. So to minimize the distraction, if I know that someone I'm talking with, understands the word, then it's easy to use.
Yeah, I go back and forth. I tend to rest on preborn, but I go back and forth on born too. I was just wondering if you...
I really don't like either word. I just talk about the fact that you're waiting to be born.
Right, a human being. We're talking about a human being. Exactly. And I wrestle with that too.
Shouldn't have to say one or the other.
Right. We're talking about a human being. Any human being. No human being has a right to murder another human being. the end. I agree with you. Okay, so that, oh, hold on. You can go ahead and hit the next slide. Last time we did the Bluetooth faulted on us. Okay, I knew I had one more here. Go ahead, hit another slide there, John. Okay, so we are updating our website, abolishabortionak.com, and it has the updated Alaska Pastors Resolution on there. So the first picture you see is our home screen. We're in the middle of changing that as well, but on that front page, you go down and you're going to see the Alaska Pastors Resolution. Right above there, if you click there, you can, once you've read the Alaska Pastors Resolution, if we're trying to get resolved on this, if you are in agreement with this, then we would want to see you sign in agreement. You will get further information from us. This will also help the uniting together and supporting David Eastman and our bill.
Good.
See, I too can learn. So please look over that resolution. We have 1,000 of these printed that we just got this week. And if you're looking at a way of trying to get involved and how to get involved, well, we have 1,000 of these, and we need to speak to churches. We need to speak to the shepherds, the pastors. They need to lead this movement, other Christians. So we need to make them aware of abolition movement and that we stand on God's word, and we support David Eastman completely. He's getting hit hard, and he needs our support to rally around him. So next week we are going to be talking about first, not a victim. The mother is not a victim, and we've touched on that, but we're going to go over the pastor's resolution, and we're going to read it. So if you want to pre-read it, have any questions, then we'll end on that. Oh, one last matter of business, and Echo, these books are yours. Clay, you need to come up here and get these because Echo's already stated she wouldn't come and get them. I promised them to her. Sure. Yes. With the upcoming election, are there any candidates who are likely to support you or the bill?
I don't know of any, but it doesn't mean they aren't there, because I haven't had a chance to talk to all of them, and there's probably between now and June 1st, and more will decide to run for office, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk with them as well. So I understand, no, I take that back. There is one candidate who's running for Senate to replace David Wilson, who has been very supportive of the bill in the past, and I'm sure he would be supportive again if he got elected. He's run, he hasn't won, but he'll be running again this year. His name is Stephen Wright.
Stephen Wright, we will contact him. On our website, we have the email addresses for those who are in committee, that the bill is in committee on. Majority of those, my understanding, that committee are heavily supported of Planned Parenthood. Is that correct?
You know, I don't know specifically about the members of the bill. I think the Democrats on that committee, yes, do fall into that category. The Republicans are not terribly supportive of any bills that I know of that would, limit or end abortion right now, because it's not really high on their priority list as far as the amount of time their committee has spent on this issue is very small. But you can certainly engage with them. Some of them are Republican, but none of them have co-sponsored the bill. But I would say to anyone, if you want to kind of know where things are at in the legislature, at least in the House, which is the larger body in Alaska, last week's debate on the contraception coverage bill is a good place to start. And you can see people taking sides. We put a number of different things to a vote on whether or not there would be religious exemptions so that, religious employers wouldn't have to provide this coverage for contraception under their insurance plans. And, we also, wanted to remove those drugs which may not intentionally cause abortion, but still cause them, as a second or third mechanism of injury, if you will. And so you can hear people get up and say, oh, I'm very pro-life, but I'm going to vote with Planned Parenthood on this issue or that issue or the bill. And so it does. It gives you, you get to hear in their own words what they're saying and a little bit of the context of, why they're about to vote the way they're about to vote. And I think that, as much as anything, would give you a good idea of kind of where the game is right now.
I also had one last question that came to mind. So I know that the first hearing of your bill was private, was not open to the public to have an input on.
Oh, yes, as far as public testimony goes.
Public testimony. If and when it comes about to public hearing or public testimony time, I guess my question would just be any suggestions on direction and making statements so that it is well received by the people hearing?
No, not really. I think if it's from the heart, that's the best way. So there's not really a right or wrong way to, say, and people get up and talk, and some of them say great things, and some of them say really silly things on all the different bills, and it is, I would say, prayerfully think about what you're about to say, and maybe write it down. The first time I went and testified before I ever ran for office, I kind of wrote it down and tried to get it in the 2 or 3 minutes that they said we were going to get, and got up and talked. It was about a hate crimes bill, and it was something I cared about, so we went down to the LIO and gave our 3 minutes worth, and that was that. And it's not terribly difficult to do. Usually they're not mean to you, so I wouldn't be nervous. It's just a chance to say what you want to say.
Thank you very much.
And on that note, email them persistently. Make your name known.
Yeah, well, I would say anytime you want something to resonate with someone who's in a political position, first recognize that they're not going to be treating you like a normal person you would see in everyday life. They're in a different world. They live it and breathe it and act it and live it and all that. And if you have the opportunity to let them know, hey, I just want you to listen to me, and then I'll back off, and you won't have to worry about me again ever. They know a lot of people like that, because most people who reach out to those in the Capitol building that's their experience. That they don't really know, it's not something they're going to be worried about tomorrow after they talk today. They just wanted to get something off their chest, and they were glad for somebody to listen to them. And politicians, I think, intuitively know that if you're not going to worry about it, they're not going to worry about it either.
Okay, Clay, you gotta come up here and get some books. Okay, all right. I tried to trap in.
We're just, I don't know if the other guys are still here. Are they here? Nope, okay. Well, I just want to say thank
I'm
you
here.
for, oh, okay, good. Well, I am very grateful for you guys who joined us, especially the time difference. So I hope you guys found this beneficial. We certainly did. And go to sleep. Thank your wives for us, and get back to your families. But we're very, very grateful to you.
Thank you for having us on.
Absolutely.
And you too are our personal representatives. So If you'll thank your wife for us.
I sure will.
Yes, thank you.